G'day folks! If you watched my other video last week on my review of the Living Without Flies report by Catherine Phillips, you'll remember that I talked about the culture-nature divide and what that means for both humans and the planet. One place where this is really evident is in zoos, and zoos have changed over the last couple of centuries so drastically in three main ways. The first type of zoo, or the menagerie, which is what the model's known as, was very much based on human dominance and the feat of humans to be able to take animals from a foreign land and keep them. It was a really interesting day out for people to see how people could conquer these animals, and even without it being spoken, there was a huge dominant society in play there. The second form, which came quite a bit after, is the living museum format, and this is basically summed up in its name. In the first type of zoo, the menagerie form, there would be basically no information on any of the animals. They were there purely for entertainment. In the living museum form, you started to see the surge of information more. There would be plaques explaining the animal's habitat or behaviors, and this allowed humans to learn more about them whilst also feeling more connected to nature. It goes as far as the language that's used. Language, especially around animals, is something that I find fascinating because not only do we anthropomorphize, which you would think would be assisting us in viewing animals as something with intrinsic rights as we view ourselves with, but we also pair it really oddly with our culture of dominance over all other living things. If you'll go to a zoo, for example, or even a pet shop, you'll often see words like our animals, our bears, our tigers, and this is something that creates and furthers that dominance culture. There was also extensive research done, and I'm not entirely sure when, but I think it was the 50s, on the positioning of enclosures and how that affects how we perceive the animals. Enclosures that place the animals below eye level, where humans were overlooking them, increased the sense of human dominance and the perceived amount of rights that these animals in captivity should have. The third, which is the stage we're in now, is a conservation park form of zoos. I think that there are some absolutely horrible and horrific zoos in the world, and I wouldn't visit a majority of zoos that I came across, even in Australia. I do believe, though, zoos can be ethical. I would say when going to a zoo, research and look up the culture-nature divide, educate yourself and think deeply about if it's the right place that you want to go to. I think there are some good zoos around. I know of a few that have backup populations that are kept specifically for if these animals go extinct in the wild, which is an absolutely devastating human impact that zoos should not have to fix. I can also understand the argument that bringing these species that we've driven to extinction back and meddling with them and commodifying them in a zoo environment so that they are an attraction because they are so rare in the wild is dangerous for animal rights. But whilst it's singular species in an area, they're going to affect the entirety of that ecosystem, and that's why I think it is really important to make sure numbers aren't dwindling significantly to the point of extinction. Read up on the culture-nature divide and zoos in your area and what they're doing to combat it and what they're doing for conservation really, or are they just commodifying other beings? And ask yourself what you think about this. If you decided that you don't want to go to any zoos near you because you think these issues are too great, I can completely understand that. And there are many ways of seeing animals that don't conform to these kinds of structures. I think zoos definitely aren't doing as much of a job as they should do of educating people about the culture-nature divide and the effects that it has on the way we perceive nature. Zoos are not natural environments. They are simulated environments that are anthropomorphized by humans to show what we think animals are in the wild. For this reason, I think it's so important to research and to think deeply and to really respect and reflect on the nature that we live in. Thanks for watching.